future. It is so critically important, now more than ever, that every individual in our community becomes more involved participating in our local politics and system of government. It's so important that we gather with our like-minded conservative visions like we are tonight. And I want to, speaking of Jack Mueller in the back, he's the reason I got to be a precinct, or ran for precinct committee woman here in Cheyenne years ago. But in any case, it's not just about us getting together in fellowship. It's also about raising money to help support conservative, strong candidates. And as we know, whether we like it or not, campaigns cost money. And it's so important what this fundraiser is doing tonight to support strong candidates at every level here in Laramie County. I'm also very excited that tonight has an education focus. There's so much to discuss in this realm, and I truly believe that every single person should be involved, should have a seat at the table when it comes to education. And that's because our children are the most valuable resource that we have, and we must protect them. And secondly, the power of public education in this country is so great and has the potential to build our communities, to build our state, to allow for any student of any background to fulfill the American dream. But unfortunately, our fundamental purpose of public education becomes questionable when parents and community members lose trust in our public education system. Our fundamental purpose, it's very simple in education, and I say this a lot because I think so many people in this country have lost sight of it, is to prepare students for jobs and to be good American citizens. That's it. That's what we're trying to do. But again, we see that we as a country are moving away from this fundamental purpose, and we're losing trust in our public schools. We're seeing this loss of trust all across the country and even here in Wyoming. And so that's why my mission has been pretty simple, and it's this. Number one, above all, we have to rebuild trust in public education. And in doing so, we can then move on to rebuilding public education. Rebuilding trust in education is so critically important, and that's why my first strategic plan initiative is empowering parents and eliminating political bias in schools, and why just yesterday I testified before Congress in Washington, D.C., opposing sexually explicit library material. No matter how well-intentioned our schools or our teachers, we cannot forget that schools are simply temporary custodians, and our parents do not see their rights or responsibilities at the schoolhouse door. We have great teachers and great librarians, but the fact of the matter is that even right here in Wyoming, there exist books that contain sexually explicit graphic depictions that are available to minors below the age of sexual consent and paid for by taxpayer dollars. Not only is this incredibly inappropriate for any sexual orientation, but it also is a complete and utter misuse of our taxpayer dollars. And the solution is not going to come from the federal government, and it sure isn't going to come from President Biden and his appointed czar that's set to protect banned books. When of course we're not even talking about banning any books or censoring any books. We're talking about age-appropriate material for children while at school. And so the solution is here in Wyoming, and that's what we're getting to work on. And I'm really excited about tonight and all the discussion that you're hearing, because I hope to give you an idea of what we're bringing at the state level, just how we're fighting in this way. And then you'll hear from Erin Lee as a great example of what has to be done at that most grassroots level. We all have to be involved in this effort to protect our children. No one can sit on the sidelines. So when it comes to, for example, inappropriate library books, we have created a stakeholder group from folks across the state, and in just a couple of weeks, we will be announcing statewide library policy guidance. Kathy Segliano with Moms for Liberty has been very kind. And we're working to launch a considerable transparency effort that will include not only districts across the state and their curriculum and materials, but also the state agency. Erin and I were just visiting about troublesome contracts in state agencies, as well as our education data. We need to be as transparent as possible so that parents know what's going on in their kids' school. And we're going to look to continue to champion school choice after our historic win when it came to charter schools in the last legislative session. There's so much work to do. So much more work to do, which is so exciting. We've only just begun when it comes to school choice in Wyoming. So looking at how we foster more charter schools as well as education savings accounts. And we're looking at ways to define and eliminate critical race theory in the classroom. I had someone in Washington, D.C. just yesterday ask me, are you attacking public schools? And I said, my efforts are the complete contrary. I'm fighting to restore trust in public schools. This is a fight for schools, not for public schools, not against them. And so when we return that focus, when we regain trust in our public schools, that many of us were a product of. I'm a product, K through 12, public schools here in Wyoming and the university. Many of us in this room were. When we can restore that trust, when we can get back to the basics and focus on what we should be at school, we can look at better preparing kids for jobs and to be citizens. And so just a couple of our other initiatives that are fully underway to meet these missions. We're working currently on several initiatives and efforts that will increase participation in career and technical education, which I'm very passionate about. We've launched competency-based pilots with other state partners, including the governor's office, where students within one class will be able to move at different paces depending on their competencies. It's a huge new shift in education. We're bringing back patriotism in schools, and we're building what we're going to call civic schools designations all across the state, because I worry that too many students are growing up without a love for America. And we've initiated broad regulatory reform. We're going to reduce bureaucracy wherever possible to make sure that our schools can innovate and we can do better for them. And we're collecting feedback from teachers to make sure that we hear from them on how we can address the teacher shortage. And lastly, focusing on early literacy efforts so that we make sure that every child, we know that if a child cannot read in this 21st century world, they have no future. Again, back to the basics, back to what we should be focusing on in our classrooms. And lastly, I want to always touch on our fight for education funding, because it's so important, and many folks don't realize the impact that the Biden administration has on that fight. Just yesterday, I also met with the chairman of the House of Representatives Natural Resource Committee, talking about how we combat the BLM and the manner in which they are trying to kill our mineral industry that pays for schools in this state. And so as your education leader, I think it's incredibly important that not only focus on our education issues, but make sure that we get the amount of money that we deserve from our minerals here in the state. This is all very exciting and bold work. And we need you, every one of you, again, to not be on the sidelines, to be in this fight, to educate our students, and to protect our children. Every person in this room has a place in that effort, whether it's lending your voice, participating in the process, electing or running as a strong conservative candidate. The beauty of our system, education is no exception, is that we have many checks and balances and different decision makers in education. It is critical that we have strong conservative leaders every step of the way, from school board to state elected to the legislature. At the end of my testimony yesterday, Chairman Bean from Florida said, and I quote, "Wyoming should be one of our leaders." And so if I leave you with anything tonight, it's this: to know that what we do here in Wyoming, it matters. It matters here to our people, but it matters at the national level as well. And for you to recognize that you have leaders in elected office that are fighting for you, I will continue every day to fight for you and our children. I heard you on the campaign, the state hears you, and now those in Washington, D.C. hear you. Thank you, and have a great evening.